Hi guys, it's me, Katrina. I'm doing a video today covering the story about the Bradenton police officer who in 2011, apparently he began misusing his police resources, and he's stalked over 150 women. Let me get the story. Yeah, he has at least 150 victims that he basically use the like the DMV database to pull up all of their information, and then he would go to their homes, he would cold call them, he would pull them over on purpose. He finally ended up getting caught because apparently this woman, he was stalking this woman, misusing the resources, and and I guess her parents were alarmed by it. So they called, his manager and they found out that he was on duty. He claimed that he was there for some kind of a domestic disturbance, but he wasn't. He was just, being a creep. So I wanted to cover this because this actually lines up with my main topic that I'm exposing, which is immunity human trafficking. And I'm a victim of this. My entire life has been completely ruined because of this for the past 4 years. Sorry. Basically, what immunity trafficking is, it's a human trafficking ring that's being run by police officers, government workers. It's being run on military bases and college campuses, anywhere that there's a cloistered environment. But the main theme of it is that it's government protected. Now, I did a video before about signs that you are being stalked by a government protected trafficker. So check out that video. But this particular one, this story is really interesting. Hi, Deb. Ever since I decided to do the story, I have this like cough happening. Okay, so basically, what these officers are doing and how they're misusing their resources when they do get a woman into their immunity trafficking ring, they're putting them under a bogus investigation. So they're basically misusing their resources with other people who are involved in the immunity trafficking ring. So they'll have judges, they'll have lawyers, they'll have other officers, people that work in the FBI, basically in every government, CPS, all over the place. They have operatives everywhere with this human trafficking ring, which is a nightmare. And they fabricate information, and they put the woman on a basically a bogus investigation, and then she and then this allows them to tap her phones and surveil her and all that, which is why you hear a lot about officers getting away with raping women, how nothing seems to happen, how they just attack women and do horrible things, and like they just get like administrative leave or nothing, just nothing happens. Like the little girl, the 18-year-old girl over in New York City, I think she was in New York, and the two officers that had they took her in custody in the back of a van, and they raped this girl. Well, it turns out that the case was just dismissed and it had gone to court. They had people gang stalking this girl. I remember seeing something about where they had one of their lawyers come to the house and just terrorize her. She's a young girl, and I guess she's been exposing a lot of this stuff on her Instagram. But like the officers actually left DNA inside of this girl during the assault, and it was proven that they had done this. I didn't read the full story about why the case was dismissed. I was too mad. But as soon as I heard what they had done to this girl, I knew she was a victim of immunity, and I knew that somebody somewhere along the way sold her into this immunity trafficking ring, where basically you don't even know that you've been sold into trafficking. All of a sudden your life is turned upside down. You have a lot of weird people contacting you, like coming up to you on the street saying strange things. They put surveillance. Oh yeah, all of Wisconsin, Deb, is I think Wisconsin is actually like the portal to hell, because that's where my problem started. Um, so basically, they're just covering. They're going in and just your whole life gets ruined. So what they're doing, they're surveilling you, but then they also have cameras put in the house. So you're being live streamed on their phones, on different apps, on the dark web. What they're doing is, if you're unaware of the fact that you are sold into this and they have surveillance up in your house, like right now, we're being surveilled as I do this. Yay. So what do you call it? They will, they'll say maybe you are seeing somebody and you sleep with them and they videotape it and live stream it. They will then, as part of their investigation, tell the community that you're a prostitute. So they'll take the footage and make it look like you're some kind of woman of the night, and then they'll do their best to disenfranchise you. They will ruin your business. They'll ruin any kind of economic opportunities. One of the moves that they like to do is pull their victims over a lot, so then she eventually loses her license, and then she just gets overpowered in the courts by them. But it's all basically to disenfranchise the woman and then hopefully, in their eyes, force her into like a life of prostitution. I know that in my case, it had to do with, there's different types of victims of immunity. And in my case, it was to knock me down a few pegs. They have women who are called pedestal victims and high value targets. Apparently I was one of them. They're doing this to celebrity females. Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, like those kind of girls are also victims of immunity. You ever notice that they always seem to get pictures of them in the worst possible moments, and just to make them look bad? Well, a lot of the paparazzi are actually CIA operatives, and are basically paid under the table by the CIA, because the head of all this is CIA. It has to do with MK Ultra programming, and yeah. So, but at the street level, it's the police, and if they have you under a bogus investigation, if apparently from what I've heard, is if you're under a police investigation, you don't know about it, and you go to the FBI, because this is usually interstate, and it's human trafficking. It's a federal crime. They can't help you when you go to the FBI, because the police, who are already tracking you anyway, will call the FBI prior and let them know that you're some kind of a wild hooker, domestic terrorist, or something. So when you go there, they won't help. This all happened to me, but they're pretty sick. And so when I saw this story today about the Bradenton police officer who apparently stalked over 150 Hispanic, specifically Hispanic women, and I guess they barely spoke English, so he already picked a marginalized subset of the community that he knew that he could probably bully and get away with. I think that Daniel Holtzclaw, I think that's his last name, who got arrested like a year or two ago or whatever, who was another police officer who was targeting black females and assaulting them, and he got caught. They pick people who've been disenfranchised. When this all happened to me, I was not disenfranchised. I owned my own home. I had my own business. I was a YouTube personality. I was an activist for MK Ultra Monarch programming. I was not someone, I didn't do drugs. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't really do anything. I lived a very clean lifestyle. And they did their best to basically misuse my MK Ultra programming to make it look like I was something way different. So they got a ton of footage, and I've been, God, I don't even know how much. it's like an insane amount of footage of me. And then anywhere I go, they just basically pass it off and say, oh, this is what she is. So I can never have like a normal life anywhere I go. I mean, like, because, you know, and they make it really hard to meet anybody or do anything because they surveil everything. So it's very annoying. I really don't care what kind of footage that they have because none of that is me. I have no recollection of any of it. I don't remember anything that was done. It was under mind control. Every single thing was done under mind control. MK Ultra never went away. It's just sick now how they're using it to silence the victims who are breaking programming. So, but let's listen to what the chief of police. They have a female chief of police in Bradenton who apparently is not down with any of this nonsense that her officer was doing, and I gotta say bravo to her because she's not covering it. So let me play what happened.
Complaint was filed against Sergeant Leonel Marines by an adult female and her parents. They had concerns over the actions of Marines after he had a chance brief encounter with her in the parking lot of a local establishment. While driving home, she became concerned upon realizing he was following her in his police cruiser, although he turned off shortly before her arrival to her parents' house. A short time later, Marines showed up to this residence and told her parents who answered the door that he was there to speak with a woman who had arrived there shortly before regarding a domestic matter. Parents, of course, recognized there was no domestic situation occurring with their daughter, questioned his true intentions, and refused to allow their daughter to come to the door. Marines continued to persuade the parents to let him speak with their daughter. However, they refused and requested his name and supervisor information. Marines left the residence without providing any of this. They immediately called our agency and spoke with the watch commander on duty, who was able to determine that it was Leonel Marines, who was working at the time, and who, upon questioning, told him a starkly different account, saying he followed her to her residence because one of her headlights was out and he thought maybe she was impaired. The two stories really didn't match up, and when it was brought to my attention, I ordered a further investigation into the incident, which ultimately led to an audit of Marinas' driver's license and vehicle registration records use, as well as his patrol activity. The results of this audit heightened my concern even greater due to discrepancies of the subjects he was conducting queries on versus his involvement he and the department were working on with regards to open and active cases as well. A very, very clear trend of focusing on female versus male names emerged. At the beginning of the investigation, Marina is a 12-year employee with our agency and serving in a supervisory capacity, was pulled from patrol activities and assigned to desk duty. As the investigation continued and the egregious nature of his actions became more and more.
Okay, one more thing. If he's in a supervisory capacity within the police station, they need to check out his subordinates because more than likely he was training them also on how to misuse the database and misuse the resources to do basically the stalking of women and the immunity trafficking that has been going on. Yes, because there's never just one doing this. It's always a little crew of them doing it.
Our parent, he was ultimately placed on administrative leave without pay and stripped of his badge, gun, and uniforms. On October 30th, 2018, Marinas resigned. Our investigation, however, continued and revealed several hundred questionable database queries of women during a specific time frame that was chosen due to our ability to correlate this data through various internal systems. It also revealed that this behavior may have been going on for years, stretching as far back as 2012. Ultimately, we were able to locate and interview nearly 150 women in association with this case. From there, a smaller subset was identified in which we were clearly able to show that Marines engaged in negative and inappropriate direct contact with them while presenting himself as a Bradenton police officer, both on and off duty. To get right to the root of the matter, Leonel Marines was not utilizing this data for law enforcement purposes whatsoever. Instead, he was using it in a variety of ways via social media, cold telephone calls, visits to their home under the guise of being there for police business, you name it, to try and get dates with these women. And he was very persistent and successful at times in his efforts to do so. Of course, it goes without saying that this is not what our officers should be doing with their access to information or with their time. I will add that a majority of this smaller subset were Hispanic women. Let me be clear how important it was to me, to this agency, that this administrative case was handled appropriately and no stone left unturned. At one point, 5 investigators were involved, working full-time, resulting in thousands of hours to mine data and to locate and interview involved subjects. Our internal investigation was recently closed with the finding of numerous administrative violations involving gross misconduct, to include misuse of criminal justice information, violations of our record security policy, and sex on duty. Had Marines not resigned, he would have been fired, and that finding has been provided to FDLE relative to his law enforcement certification. I'd also like to add that an enhancement of our database auditing practices has already occurred within the agency. While BPD's administrative case has concluded, this remains a very active and open criminal investigation which is being handled by the FBI. For that reason, while I appreciate the desire for the public to know more, BPD's administrative case material will not be released at this time.
I personally think if the FBI is getting involved, that they probably did find that there's more officers involved. This is my prediction, because I basically, this is all that I've been dealing with for years, and I know their networks. So if they look deep enough, they'll be able to find the immunity trafficking on their police network. There will be offshoots off of the network that the IP and server and that is running off of, and they'll be able to find, where they're running all the illegal pornography and all their criminal activity off of. And if they can't find it, I'll be happy to tell them the ASN numbers to look off of and the websites. As a matter of fact, I might just tell them. Here, let's go. Here we go.
As the FBI has indicated that doing so could compromise their ongoing investigation. I've tried to paint a clear picture for you today in light of this, so that you respect our need to retain the confidentiality of this information and this investigation. My primary goal in appearing before you this morning is to foremost ensure that the public is aware that Leonel Marines is no longer serving in the capacity of a sworn police officer with the Bradenton Police Department, and secondly, to assist the FBI with their investigation by providing you with a picture of him and encouraging anyone who may have further information to contact the FBI Tampa office at 813-253-1000. This is truly a disturbing situation for me as chief. Over the past couple weeks, I have personally met with most of the women involved in the smaller subset in an effort to help them regain their trust in the Bradenton Police Department and to ensure them that Marines' actions are not a representation of those who so proudly wear this uniform and badge, and also simply to tell them, I'm sorry.
Okay. And actually, what is interesting is that I live in near Daytona Beach, which Tampa's not near here, and I actually had the Tampa Police Department on my router, and I had Pinellas County on my router. I've had all kinds of different police stations. I had Beverly Hills Police Station. I've had police stations out of everywhere, basically, courthouses, things like that. Some of the problems that I had directly with police officers during 2015, when all of this began, is when I wish I had never called the police for help. I think that was the worst thing that I ever did, but I was told by a lot of people, you need to call, you need to report things, have a paper trail, but they were just setting me up to make it, because the amount of things that were occurring on a daily basis, they were just trying to make me look crazy with the police, and then basically get me familiarized with the human trafficker police that were coming to my house. So I had one incident one night. This was right before I actually ended up selling my house. I was in my bedroom at 10:30 at night and getting ready to go to bed, and I'm laying in bed, and all of a sudden I see a big flashlight in my window, and my lights were off, and I'm like, oh my God. So my dogs go crazy, and I was just like, oh my God. So then I hear my neighbor next door, because where my bedroom window was, you have to go into the neighbor's yard. So the cop stopped his car in front of our house, goes through my neighbor's yard, goes into my bedroom window in the back with a big old flashlight. My neighbor comes out and asks, what the hell is going on? Why are you in my backyard? Why, and the officer tried to go into my neighbor's house. And my neighbor's like, you're not coming in my house. There's no reason. Why are you in my backyard? Why do you have a flashlight in her window? And apparently he said that he was there for a noise disturbance. And my neighbor's like, there's no noise going on. He said, well, someone was cutting a tree down, and we got a call for that. Okay, 7 hours prior at 3:30 in the afternoon, my neighbor was cutting a tree down with a handsaw, not even an electric saw. Him and his wife were cutting trees. They were done with everything by 5 o'clock. No one called. There was no noise. But because they were surveilling, they had cameras set up. They had a whole security system in the park that I lived in, specifically keeping me surveilled in my house. They knew that there were trees cut because there was a security camera that they were linked up watching me off of. Yeah. So then there was another incident where my dog was poisoned, and I had called the police. I was told to, report that also. So I called the police. I had all the veterinary paperwork. There was a cop that I had dealt with before, who he had been professional. He was okay when I reported, someone had been in my house. They broke a big studio light. My window in the front room was all bent up. The screen was bent up. I didn't know what happened, so I reported it to him. He came over, was fine, offered, to the computer forensics lab, because I told him what happened before, how it was just getting worse and worse. So I report my dog being poisoned, and he was trying to get in my house. And it was at night. I called the non-emergency line, said, hey, if you got someone, just send them over. I got to, do a quick report. And he was insisting on coming in my house. I said, no, I have the paperwork proving that my dog was, poisoned. This is escalating yet again. And he said that those papers could all be a lie. I'm like, why would I, why? And I'm like, the dog's already been treated. He doesn't show symptoms. You don't need to go in my house to see the dog. Here is the paperwork. I don't have to you don't have to come in my house. Well, I have a gate in my house and the backyard. And he was telling me that, that people were saying I was crazy at the department because of all of my electronic issues. Well, had they done their fucking jobs, they would have seen that that someone put a super user in my computer. That no, you're right, Deb. It gets more harassment if you report it. They would have seen that someone put a super user right after I moved into my house, which basically takes over your hard drive and your whole system and the administration of your whole system, which means somebody was controlling it from beyond. I had, I had said everything that I do is completely taken over. I'm completely surveilled. This is insane. I'm being, like I didn't understand really that much back then. Um, but so then what he did, he was trying to say that I was crazy, trying to say all this stuff. Then he said, well, I said, well, my dog got poisoned with rat poison. And he goes, he'd be dead by now. I said, no, it actually takes 5 days to kick in. And then they start bleeding rectally and all kinds of stuff. And I had found, he threw up something that was kind of like decon colored. So I kept an eye on him, because I didn't have decon in my house. And on the 3rd day, he started bleeding and his back legs were completely stiff. So I took him to the vet. And vet gave me all the paperwork saying that, more than likely he was poisoned. His platelets were like 66, which is like really low. White blood cell count was super high. The fact that his back legs were completely stiff, that's a sign of poisoning. So he was only like maybe a year and a half old at that point. He was still a baby. So then all of a sudden he gets on his personal cell phone and starts texting somebody. And then another officer comes, and this was another cop that I had reported all of my electronics to. He didn't take any notes. He didn't even take the notes I had made up for him about everything that had occurred. Didn't take those and was super unhelpful, asked for my business card and asked me if I lived alone. And I'm like, okay, but you have to understand, I had never dealt with police officers. You know what I mean? I didn't understand that, like, that you had to get a report number, like a paper. I didn't know that. People are like, did you get the report number paper? I'm like, what is that? like I had never been arrested. I had never been in trouble. I thought you call the police and then they help you. I didn't know the circle of hell that these assholes, work in. And so when the second cop came, he asked me if I remembered him. And I said, yeah, I did my report with you about my electronics and that. And he goes, that's not where you remember me from. And he started laughing. And like my house is like right here and the fence is here. I'm standing there. They literally had me cornered, trying to intimidate me and trying to get into my house, these two officers. And I was like, oh, hell no. I'm like, oh, my God. I'm like, you know what? I'm fine. Just whatever. And I went back in my house and that. And then I went on my YouTube. And because they were controlling my whole computer, they all of a sudden I go on YouTube and my recommended videos are cops rape sleeping woman, chemical lobotomy of a woman, bikers rape woman, all this rape woman kind of themes, or raping a sleeping woman, like just sick themes. Like these are not things that I look up, but when they're controlling your whole computer, they can through SQL injections can put in recommended videos or create like an overlay and put in really sick things. But I mean, they were doing things like my house phone was on the router, like how the phones are on the router now. They were turning my router off in the middle of the night. So it'd be 2:00 in the morning. I'd be awake and somebody would completely turn my internet off for 3 hours. And I'm thinking someone's going to come in and kill me, because like they cut the phone line. I couldn't get on the internet. I didn't know what to do. I was terrified. So then that was happening. They actually went as far as I had security lights all on the outside of my house. And when I moved in, they were there. So all of a sudden, they had all gone out at the same time. Well, I figured, maybe they were put in at the same time, just normal occurrence. So then I go to take out the one by my front door to bring it to the store to make sure that I get the right ones. And the fucking thing is unscrewed. They went and unscrewed all of my security lights. And to make it so my yard was completely dark, so when they were entering my house or doing whatever, around my house and gassing my house and poisoning my food and, pulling me from the house and that, it would be completely dark. So then I went and I got new light bulbs, put all new ones in. 2 days later, I hear a big pow on my house. 8:30 at night. It wasn't even late. I'm all the way in the back bedroom. I go out in front and they broke the sensor. Somebody came up to my door and broke the sensor on my lights so they wouldn't work at all. So of course I called the police again and I said, this is getting worse. I'm like, now they've broken my security lights. They have, this is like really getting out of hand. So when they broke the security lights, I got the dog poisoning officer, the asshole, and he said, "You're lying. You're probably lying." I go, "I'm not lying. Why would I?" I'm like, really? So I didn't understand back then, and I found out it was just like basically a terror campaign to drive me nuts, to make me look crazy with law enforcement. I question, I'll be honest with you, I question whether or not they were actually Cook County sheriffs or people in fucking like costumes, because they were so unprofessional. And then I would have different officers coming through and, they would stop and, "Oh, how's everything going? I know you were getting harassed, and do you live alone?" Was always a question, like not questioning like, for my safety, but questioning for my vulnerability. Before all this began, we had 2 police officers that would come in the park every once in a while, drive through, and they were very nice, never had a problem. I lived in this place for a few years, and never had an issue. No, and then I bought my own unit, and as soon as I bought my own unit, I was isolated, and they went crazy. And the one I had called one day, and to report my AT&T, because apparently my phone number was not registered as being a phone number with AT&T. I had found out they were controlling all my phone lines, and I finally had to use someone else's account number to get through to someone who wasn't part of the human trafficking syndicate. And the woman at AT&T said, "Your phone number isn't connected." I'm like, "But I'm using it every day." So I asked if I could have like an old school landline, one that's not on the router. This was after they were going in and cutting my phone line in the middle of the night. Well, she goes, "I've never seen anything like this, but you're blocked. It says that your address is not eligible to have like an old school landline." Like, what? And so then they had to have like 2 different managers work on it. They were able to finally remove the block. They gave me a phone number, like a new phone number, that I would be able to use. And for the old school phone, like landline. And then like I go in, I had an installation appointment for a Wednesday, and then I go into my computer and I check the appointment, and someone canceled that appointment and rescheduled it for Thursday. And what's also interesting too is that my phone number, while it didn't exist, all of a sudden my aunt's phone number was on there, who lived down the street. I never had her phone number on there, but they were the phone company was calling her phone number about my line. The whole thing was just, it was screwed up. I couldn't get a straight answer from anybody, so I eventually just, I my initial inkling was just to sell the house. I had only been there less than a year, but I realized that I had a new malignant neighbor that had moved in at the same time that I did, who's given me problems for a decade. And I realized, you know what, fuck it, I'll leave. I don't care. I'll move as far away from these people as I can, so, but it was just like, but then things were escalating, and I'm like, well, let me see if police are going to help me. So then I put selling my house on hold, hoping that I would get help with the cops. Then I find out, basically they're running all of this. It was a nightmare. Like the whole thing was like a living, insane nightmare. And then finally it was like I sold my house, and then that was when like hell began. It was like I was trapped. They had put a security system when they started all this with me in January 2015. We got new management that came into the park, and it was a woman. And she said, we're going to put up a whole new security system, and we're going to really revamp this place and clean it up and that. And I'm like, oh, great. So I'm thinking that with a woman managing the place, women are more receptive to things. I didn't know the evilness of women. I didn't know anything really back then. And I thought with the security system, if somebody messes with me, then, cool. Well, I didn't know that the security system was brought in to literally cage me in, to make it so anytime that I ever went anywhere or did anything, I would be surveilled. Anything that I did that was incriminating, like, people pulling me out of my house at night under mind control, would be used to, for national security purposes, because apparently my vagina is like, a national security level. And like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So basically, I believe that they were editing the tapes to make it look like I was some kind of like wild hooker or whatever, but I'm not. I was celibate at the time, born again Christian. Hadn't been on a date in years. Had been in a long-term relationship for 3 years prior, and then another 6-year one prior to that. I was not like running around all fast, really picky about who I associated with at that point. But because I worked at home, and I was always able to, I always had a lot of money, and, people didn't really know what I did, because I worked from home. They were telling people I was like a hooker or some kind of a criminal. It's just sick. The whole thing is sick. But yeah, I'm going to do more videos on immunity trafficking. It's a little known crime, but there are so many women that are a victim of this, and they're not even aware that they're a victim of it, So, all right, well, I'm going to go. I'm probably in trouble for talking, as usual. So, yeah. Well, for yesterday's video, I got basically hit with directed energy in the head, so I woke up all like, not good. So, all right. Bye, guys.